You're my babe. Yeah, you brighten up my day.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another movie review. And today's movie is a little delicate film titled 5 Feet Apart, and it's a romance movie. Not only that, it is a romance movie of two people falling in love despite the fact that they have CF. And yeah, this film, a lot of people were just comparing it to like The Fault in Our Stars and other movies where people, can't interact even though they love each other. I definitely see those comparisons, but I felt, as far as film originality goes, I haven't seen a whole lot of films like this. I don't really even get to see a whole lot of romances in general. And so whenever I'm able to, whenever I get to go to the theaters and it's not like a big action Marvel, sci-fi horror inventive film, whenever it's not those, I kind of, I kind of get excited. And fuck, I like romances. There's so many obscure little movies that have so much good content in there, and I'm kind of just trapped in the mainstream, but whenever I get to venture off even a little bit, this is a big budget movie, obviously. Whenever I'm able to watch films like this, it warms my heart. But I've read and seen The Fault in Our Stars, and I would like to drop all comparisons to that. That was a film that was focused on a person going through a very big journey and learning certain things while also being a huge romance for a character who was also dying, essentially. It was cancer patients falling in love while also this character was going on this big arc that John Green could relate to. This is a movie much more focused on this disease, much more focused on this romance, and much more focused on the character relationships going on here, because the majority of this film takes place in a hospital. And as a person who works in a hospital every fucking day, they are not like the most awesome places to be at every single day, but they make it into this enjoyable little film, like just patients, FaceTiming each other from like across the hall. That's fun shit, man. I love those parts of this movie. Essentially, there's like four main characters, and then like their parents and a couple other people who are kind of background characters. I will say I definitely want more of the parents in this film, because she treats, like, they have these conversations like, I don't want my mom or my significant other to pay for my disease. It's just going to burden them. What if I die quicker? Then they'll just move on with their life quicker. That type of stuff. Those conversations exist, but they're not really based on anything within the movie, because we don't really know their parents all that well. They fall into the story later, and they're just kind of going along with emotions that are already set in place. Like, none of them are like, they don't feel like real people with like real intentions or desires. They have a certain conflict with each other, like their parents disagree with something, and it literally just gets dropped and doesn't go anywhere. The parents in this film exist because they need to. If we actually explored them, then those conversations of my parents having to go through this with me, and that kills them almost as much as it kills me, would have been an entirely bigger, more interesting topic. But that's not what the movie focuses on. The movie focuses on a romance between two people who have a disease where they got some gooey little lungs, and if their gooey little lungs get too close to each other, there's going to be some bacteria that crosses, and they'll probably fucking die. Despite the fact that they love each other. But the two characters we got are Haley Lou Richardson as the main character Stella, who is a very OCD. She's actually clinically OCD and has to have all certain things go a certain way. She takes her medicine as she does. She helps coordinate the other patients, and she does everything the right way. She's going to fight this disease as long as she can, and she's also making YouTube videos about it in the meantime. That's actually a super fun thing that obviously I could relate to. And I really like her. She was like charming when she needed to be. She was like fun and spunky when she needed to be. You root for her automatically. She is a great main character. And then we had Cole Sprouse as Will Newman, who was kind of like the cynical, nihilistic rich boy who's like, yeah, I'm gonna die. It is what it is. Hey. He was kind of a douchebag, but he was, a likable douchebag. There was maybe only like 2 or 3 scenes that like I really was not feeling him. There was also like 1 or 2 scenes in particular where I was like, nah, dude, like, you're awesome. Like, the character is perfect for this scene. Other than that, I kind of just felt like he was a guy reading lines, He was kind of just your Edward Cullen pretty boy, going through the same lines, just kind of like, with just enough emotion, but like enough there that you can like feel the acting coming out of him. Whereas his counterpart, Stella, felt so natural in everything she did, from just like the way she smiles when she laughs, or like the way like she like her eyes focus in on you when she's angry. That all felt so real to me. And then you just got Cole Sprouse over here just kind of like doing his thing. Like, Stella, what? Definitely different class of acting, but I guess that's subjective. And yes, I did fucking watch fucking Zack and Cody growing up. I know this motherfucker can act. I know he's been doing it a while. I'm just saying I didn't feel it in this movie. Like, I grew up in that time period. I know that fucking Poe was on a fucking episode of Hannah Montana, and I didn't even need to fucking look that up. I don't know some of the characters in some of my favorite movies, but I know that fucking kid is from an episode of Hannah Montana. Speaking of that guy, he was probably my favorite part of this entire movie. Poe was a very lax comedic role. He was like the kind of like third wheel best friend character, who was also gay and had like a lot of jokes about that and his relationships. And he really encapsulated how this film could be a warm comedy turned to a surreal drama, turned into the sappy, fun movie that is probably at its heart. And he embodied all of that. Every scene that he was in, I felt like he carried. Everything that was going on with him, I cared about. There was a scene with him that was very dramatic. He was not the dramatic part about that scene. There's a couple, like, the way it was filmed and just maybe the way some of the characters are acting is a little bit like certain characters are doing too much and certain characters are not doing enough. Specifically, Cole Sprouse. Literally, a most emotional scene in the fucking world right here. And then Cole Sprouse just walks by, he sees it, and then just keeps on walking. That's his emotional limit. Other than that, we have the nurse, who was kind of like an antagonist in certain ways because she was very much keeping these two apart. She was trying to keep them apart so they wouldn't die. She had some other patients who were in a very similar circumstance who did die, and she just doesn't want that to happen for them because they're fighting, and lung transplants are a thing and they can do it, and she just believes in them. They probably aren't going to live, but they have a chance at living for a while, and that matters to her, and she's gonna fight for it. So she's also super fun, and she had a lot of really good lines. So you love pretty much this entire cast. And as far as the romance goes in this film, it's pretty cute. It's got a little cute romance. There is certain moments, people have seen the film. There's a scene by a pool, and that poolside scene was actually very effective. There are certain moments where it actually made me feel like these two romances, to me, if you can make me feel like these two have a certain connection that like only these two characters can have, that is special. There's certain ways they interact that isn't just them doing generic romance stuff. They're doing generic romance stuff that is specific to them and leads into their interests and their life and their disease and what they're trying to do, etc. They have a specific relationship and it goes certain places, and just the whole idea of they have to be 5 feet apart. So at one point they start carrying a fucking pool cue, and they have to hold it at all times, and they're like holding hands but with a pool cue. It's fucking cute. Now, the ending to this film, you do expect people to die. And I'm not gonna say if anybody does or doesn't, but there was one moment where I was just thinking in my head that they both died and that it was just the most tragic ending of the world. I think they were teasing that, or they have an alternate ending where it's the most morbid ending where they just go against all norms and they break away their consciousness to this crazy realm, and they're just these crazy kids, and it's this tragic story. The ending of that film is probably too much, considering that this is a film that is very much just trying to help people under this condition and trying to spread awareness. But there is a darker film out there that exists with that ending. The ending they went with, I'm not a huge fan of. It's not because any certain person died or anything, or a certain person, because odds are they're not going to stay together. But the way it was handled was kind of cheap, and it was a cheap ending that was filmed way too dramatically. And I like the little, right before they roll the credits, they have this nice little moment, but there was a long part where I didn't like what they were doing with it. I didn't like this idea that, they were, these sworn-off lovers, and, they kind of were coming to, an acceptance about that. When, in reality, I was like, okay, I kind of feel like there's more going on here. And I felt like the story was still being told after the movie ended. It's definitely one of those films where it's like, okay, this is a nice, sweet little point, but I know that these characters are going to go and do different things, and they're probably going to keep in contact a little bit. If this guy is about to die, he's probably going to at least send a fucking text message to the person he loves most. So I was kind of upset about that. But it was what it was, and for how the film did end, it was a good spot, just not the best spot. And everything leading up to it, I loved the aesthetic of the film. This hospital, it's a very nice hospital. As a person who cooks hospital food for a living, I saw her plate and I was like, oh, that's unrealistic. But I was like, you know what? It's a nice hospital though. I don't know what I'm talking about. I dig the aesthetic of the pools and the lights, if that makes sense. There's a scene where they're walking in the snow. You actually get some very distinct visuals for a movie that takes place in a hospital. Yeah. Anyway, I'm going to give 5 Feet Apart a 7 out of 10. I very much enjoy kind of learning about a disease that I vaguely knew about, but now I feel like I understand. Obviously, I can't get in the headspace of people with this disease, but I feel like at least I can empathize a little bit easier and try to understand and try to support that a little bit more. Because of a movie. That's why movies are important. They can teach us about the world around us. And the romance was pretty good. I loved Poe. I loved pretty much every single character. Cole Sprouse was a little bit douchey, but he served his role. Everything other than that, pretty swell. And guys, if you like my movie reviews, you can check out my Letterboxd account and look at every film I've ever watched. I got lists, I got ratings, I got it all, man. So check me out on Letterboxd. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching, and until next time, with that, I leave you.